Hey guys, Rachel from Past Building Consultants here. Today I'd like to have a little look at checking your specs against your plans. Quite often, especially at design stage preliminary assessments for SDA, you may be faced with having a set of plans which is not necessarily supported by a full specification sheet for your fittings, fitments, colours, selections, that kind of thing. But it's really important that you do obtain these as an SDA assessor, and it's also important that you consider these if you're a developer, builder, or a designer. Simply because whilst it may be written correctly on the plans and drawn correctly on the plans, this has to then be replicated in the specifications themselves. Let's take toilets as an example. So somebody may have taken the toilet dimensions and popped those on the plans and it may be fine. But the specifications need to reflect what is shown on the plans. Very often I have seen specifications which vary completely from what's shown on the drawing. One example would be having an in-wall flushing system when the specifications refer to something completely different. So what that can mean is that which is the correct one? Is it what's shown on the plans, or is this what's shown in the specifications? So by being able to have access to both of those and putting them together and then highlighting any possible discrepancies between the two, you're really going to be saving the builder on site a lot of heartache down the track if the two don't match up. So really, I think as an SDA assessor, you need to be making sure that the two correspond with one another, and certainly from a builder's perspective and a designer's perspective, ensuring that the selections are at a stage whereby they support what the plans show. Because some of the dimensions in the SDA guidelines, well, most of them are very, very prescriptive, and there is no deviation from that. Toilets, for example, the toilet pan, the front of the toilet pan is 800 millimeters plus or minus only 10 millimeters. So you have to be very, very careful about what is specified and ensuring the specifications match what's shown on the plans. Toilets is one really good example. Other things are floor coverings. So it may be fine that the plan shows R10 slip resistance internally, but what do the specifications refer to? I had one recently whereby they referred to R10 slip ratings internally, but I looked at the specifications and went, well, but they're specifying porcelain tiles, smooth porcelain tiles or polished porcelain tiles, and I don't know any that would comply with an R10 rating unless you applied another finish on top of those. So it is very, very important to make sure that the specifications support the plans and the notes. Things like fittings like your cooktops and your ovens as well. So it's all very well putting a note on there that it will comply with the SDA standards and that it will have telescopic rails for your oven, it'll have a side hinge door, or that the controls will be on the front of your induction or ceramic cooktop. But if the specification that they've chosen for those appliances, if they don't know what the SDA standards are, they'll probably just pick their standard range or something that they think may comply. And that's not blaming anyone. It's just that they're not necessarily aware of those finer levels of detail and those items which can make the difference between having a compliant SDA property and not having a compliant SDA property. So really be careful with the appliance specifications as well, making sure you're checking those and that they will also be suitable for the plans that you're looking at. Side hinge doors is a really good one on ovens because, again, if you've got a right hand or a left hand hinge door on an oven, depending on where your surface is to put hot things onto it, adjacent to it, you even need to be looking at the handing of the oven doors and where the safe areas for putting hot items onto. So you also need to be thinking about ergonomics as well. So I've covered floor coverings and slip resistance. I've covered things like ovens and your cooktops. Range hoods is another one. Make sure that your range hoods can have the controls in an easily accessible location, because depending on what kind of cooktop you've got and what the regulations are, you may not be able to reach them as a participant. You may not be able to reach the actual range hood to control it. So generally speaking, range hood controls would be closer on the front of the cooktop, or on the front of the bench top, or near the front of the bench top, so that it can be controlled independently rather than having to reach up beyond the 1100 zone. So range hoods, not all of them may be able to be operated in that way. So again, be careful with those. Sliding glass doors and windows, again, just making sure that the specifications also support what's written on the plans or what has been provided to you in note form. Things like D handles, check cavity sliders really super carefully, making sure that all door handles comply with AS 1428. Contrasting colours, if you're looking at improved livability, contrast is important. So again, even the colour selections may come into play for certain SDA categories. Another thing to check is compliance with the National Construction Codes. This is applicable for only certain types of, of buildings, and just making sure that what you're asking for is not going to clash with the certifier. And sometimes having discussions with the certifier, or at least being in a communication loop with your client and the certifier, is going to pay dividends overall, because you're going to be working from the same page. Because AS 1428 can sometimes have slightly different requirements to what's required in the SDA standards, but by speaking together at design stage, you can help alleviate a lot of problems down the track. Other things to look for between your specifications and your plans, things like thicknesses of tiles, transitions between different floor coverings, electrical, are your fans going to interfere with where your ceiling hoists are potentially going to go in the bedrooms? Are your switches compatible? Do they have the 35mm surface area, rockers or toggles for your switches? So there are all kinds of things that can be in the specification, which, unless you're really going through that very carefully, may not support or could be at odds with what is specified in the plans. Don't just rely on your plans, make sure the specs support those, and if there are any discrepancies, then that should be raised as an item, because at the end of the day, if you raise it at design stage, it can be fixed. If you just leave it and go, oh well, it says on the plans it'll be okay, that could be a problem later on down the track, which is very expensive, and also it takes a lot of time to fix. So ask for the specs early on, and just make sure that they support what is shown on your plans. That's it for today. It's a really nice, super short one. Yay! I'll speak to you soon. If you've got anything you'd like me to talk about, or if you'd like to reach out to me about any aspects of building specialist disability accommodation, particularly at the design and build stage, because that's my sort of area, then by all means do reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help, and if I can't help you, I will find someone who can. Have a great day. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.